Money by Jacob Goldstein. Really great history on money. What is it? The Incas never invented money. They had a bureaucracy. They had authority. They had a central government. And they decided what to produce and when to distribute resources. They didn't need money. The first writers weren't poets. They were accountants. IOUs marked in clay balls 5,000 years ago, Mesopotamia. They would have the amount marked on the inside of a clay ball, and you'd break the ball and understand what the value of that IOU was. They later moved it to the exterior because it was easier. So in small communities, you can survive on bartering and reciprocity, tribute and redistribution. And in Greece, 600 BC, you had the polis. Instead of a top-down bureaucracy that decided when and how and where you spent redistributed resources, it was now the people, the polis, which became too egalitarian to run on tribute and too big to run on reciprocity. So this invents the space called Agora, a place where the polis gathered. This became the market. Noun means market, verb means to buy. And so now it was the market that decided what was valuable and what was the price of various resources. So you have a dichotomy between tribute and reciprocity. Reciprocity is bartering in a small town. You say, I give you a sheep for a lamb. I give you a cup of coffee for a blowjob. And then the tribute is I pay money to the king, and the king decides where it goes. The Lydians invented coin when the Chinese did. Marco Polo went to Asia, 1271, learned they had coin. And in 105 AD, China gets paper to complete the bureaucratic process. 710 AD, Buddhism reproduced sacred texts on paper. 995 AD, paper receipts for coin. In Chengdu, this was kind of like a coat check ticket. You would get a paper receipt that said you had X amount of coin. And then counterfeiting was punishable by beheading. And because feudalism ran on tribute, the market economy runs on money. History was people didn't get richer, and that changed when paper money was introduced in China. In 1200 AD, China was the richest country because it had a market economy based on paper. 1215, Genghis Khan captures Beijing, bronze coins declared illegal. 1287, second failed invasion of Japan. Inflation, after no longer being allowed to exchange paper, inflation goes up. Prices rose as money became less valuable. IOU held and still worked as money. Paper worked not because it was backed by silver or bronze, but because everybody agreed paper could be money. 1368, Hongwu pushes back the Mongols and creates the Ming Dynasty for 30 years. 1400, paper money disappears in China, and they're back to tribute and redistribution. 1600s were in Britain. Government would mint new coins in order to keep the money supply fresh. People would exchange for more valuable gold from countries like Amsterdam and France. Goldsmiths gave loans, and Swedes had copper. $10, DALERS, weighed 43 pounds. Banks gave paper money as loans. So banks obviously make money by taking your deposits, lending it, and then the borrower deposits at another bank. Bank lends same dollars in three places. This is known as fractional reserve banking. Goldsmiths were giving out more gold claim checks than there was gold. So when everyone wanted to claim their gold, they had their first bank run. Banchieri is Italian, means bench sitter. They sat on bridges over the Grand Canal, origin of the word bank. Bankers who couldn't pay back their depositors were beheaded. So this guy John Law, he's considered a genius by using the probability theory to win at gambling. He uses Pascal and Fermat in terms of determining odds of heads or tails to predict future outcomes. He used the 1/6 odds for six-sided dice to win at gambling. So he became useful to European governments who needed to predict when people die in order to promise fixed annuities. At the time, annuities were the same price regardless of how old someone was. So in 1693, Haley estimates human mortality rates, and another problem solved with being able to calculate the points. Surviving spouse annuity life insurance. Surviving insurance annuities were a way to recapture the reciprocity of small towns, social insurance, as an example. So a Dutch trading company invests in ships. It's the United East India Company. The government grants them a monopoly on all trade in Asia, and Dutch could buy shares in the company. So the charter was for 21 years with the option to cash out after 10 years. You could sell the shares sooner, prior to expiration. The limited stock exchange hours created demand, avoiding a thin market. So they had a limited hours for when you could exchange those options. In 1608, there was the first futures contract. Moving to the United States under President Jackson, he shuts down the charter for National Central Bank. There's been no central bank for 70 years. And a man by the name of Biddle lost as a proponent of banking. And Jackson saw banking as a concentration of wealth for interests of the wealthy. Jackson, being the brawler, defender of the people, he lost money when he used his store as collateral on a loan. And so it kind of made an indelible impression and created distrust of bankers. Thompson's banknote reporter references 8,300 different currencies back then. Discount was applied based on how far purchase was from the issuing bank. So you had states issuing currency. In 1865, President Lincoln taxes 10% of paper money issued by state banks to impel national use of one currency. So before we had the US dollar, we had state-based currency. Crazy. So they were careful not to call the central bank a bank because of this distrust of the banking industry, and instead they called it reserve associations, later to be the Federal Reserve Bank, which was set up by a group on Jekyll Island. So having read this book, I still know nothing about money. An article in Seeking Alpha talked about the reserve, how the rates have been kept low to the detriment of egalitarianism, in that the people who were able to exploit those low rates have been highly speculative and made a ton of money. Large cap tech company, for example, just the market cap is insane. So understanding the Federal Reserve was helpful. Bitcoin also came up as a consensus-based currency, and as long as there's wide-based consensus to use it, it can be legitimate. So that's kind of my bull argument for Bitcoin based on having read this book. Still am baffled by money.